What up, cuz? Happy Saturday! Almost said Friday. How's everybody doing? I'm good. I worked tonight. I had a fairly manageable evening. Summer's funny in restaurant world. Nobody really eats early while the sun's out. So we end up getting like our dinner rush like all at once. So it's like calm, absolute insanity. There's no words to describe it. And then it's like what's usually stretched out over a whole dinner night is just like crammed into a 2 hour period. People are like, we're ready for our dinner now. We're like, we know. It's all, everybody's dinner has been ordered at the same time. We love that. Yeah, so it was a fun night, pretty easy, low key. I was not in the main dining room. I was in like the back dining room, and it's sort of like a darker, quieter, calmer vibe with like your own workspace and things. It's kind of like a nice vacation section to go to every once in a while. So I'm grateful. But we're here. We are doing our secret sermon. We're going to, this is our segment called Secret Teachings of Jesus. And what we do is late on Saturday night, I read us the Nag Hammadi scriptures, just one portion per week because they're so heady. They're so abstract. They're so just out there. And they take some chewing. So basically what we do is we just take one portion and read it. And then I go back and I unpack it and give you the insights that I'm getting as they're coming through. And I'm not a theologian or anything. I'm just interested in this. And I didn't have any time in my life between everything else to just like leisurely read the Nag Hammadis. And I thought other people might be really interested in them too. So I thought it'd be a fun thing to do together and a good way to share. And so there's a couple of reasons why we do them late Saturday nights. For one, I work on Saturday nights and I get off really late. But it really works out, and it's kind of kismet because Saturday night is the end of Shabbat, but it's sort of like on the way to the Sabbath. So we're in holy times all weekend, in my opinion. And during the midnight hour, we are in a liminal space between the end of one thing and the beginning of the next. And in mysticism, that is a very magical opening in time for the veil to be thin and for us to access the light with a lot more accessibility than usual. And so the Hebrew sages have, throughout history, made it a point to study around the midnight hour or after and late into the evening, because for another reason, it is a way to practice Eucharist, which is the breaking of the flesh in the spirit of sacrifice, to restrict the desire to receive for the self alone, or to reach for instant gratification. So when we make, just in magical terms, we cannot pull something from nothing, right? If we manifest something, it must have come from somewhere. Scientifically speaking, energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So we're always moving energy and shifting it and transforming it. So if you are, let's say, if you want to make something magical happen and you need energy to do that, it has to come from somewhere. And the best place, the reason why they used to sacrifice, burn oats or sacrifice an animal or something like that, God forbid, it was to release the energy and let that be repurposed and transformed and transmuted into the intention that you're directing these things at. So we don't really do that anymore, but what we do is, and and Jesus was an example of this on the cross. We sacrifice ourselves. And so we do this. I mean, Jesus literally had to be a physical human sacrifice while he was being, I mean, he was a martyr. And he was also executed as an enemy of the state. But in mystical terms, he was a perfect sacrifice of energy to open and release, that opened the gateway. And like the Messiah energy is the energy that corrects all of the energies and forces from the Godhead that are coming from these different centers and concentrated in these different forms. And the release of all of that Christ energy opened up this like gateway portal for all of these energies to crisscross and come together and be integrated, I guess. And I can't think of the word that I'm looking for, but basically, oh, I have a chart and graph for today. So this is the tree of life. And these are the governing forces of reality that make up the Godhead. This is also a map of the human soul and the governing forces within a human being and the governing forces within all of reality. Okay? So just keep your mind on that for later. And then we're just in the introduction, folks. We're just talking about why we sacrifice the flesh. So we sacrifice the flesh within ourselves. I mean, even just pushing ourselves in a workout with a holy intention, or, you know, pushing ourselves to stay up late so that we can attain more wisdom, so that we can share that wisdom with others and embody it in our lives and be brighter lights in the world and be better servants to the light. So that sacrifice of our comfort, of our energy, is re-released, and it opens us up for greater understanding and blessings to come through, and protection and favor, whereas you know, it kind of corrects any kind of negative energy that we've accumulated or put out into the world. It sort of like starts to balance that scale. We're also sacrificing our weaker parts of ourselves in order to transcend them, hopefully, is what we're trying to do. Yeah, and so this week we are picking back up with a portion called the inner and the outer. And if you go back like 6 or 7 videos ago, you'll see that last week we are picking up from the Gospel of Philip. Last week we read the inner and the outer, and I rapped on about that. And I felt like we barely scratched the surface, and there was so much more to talk about. And I wish that I had my glyph, my big chart out that we could refer to. So I just thought I would just do this portion again and talk about it some more. And again, and maybe repeat some things we said, and maybe we'll come up with some new things to say, and we'll remember things that we forgot last week, hopefully. Or maybe not. Either way, this is it. This is the agenda, people. This is the curriculum. I also feel like my eyes are irritated, and like my eyelids feel like they're swelling. So if my eyes start doing weird stuff, it's because I'm having like some kind of weird physical reaction where my eyelids feel heavy, and I think they're like sensitive to something in the room. Okay, let's begin. The inner and the outer. Oh, and then when Philip, the writer, refers to he, I'm assuming that he's referring to Jesus, right? Okay, the inner and the outer. For this reason, he said, I have come to make the lower like the upper, and the outer like the inner, and to unite them in that place. He spoke here in symbols and images. Those who say there is a heavenly person and one that is higher are wrong, for they call the visible heavenly person lower, and the one to whom the hidden realm belongs higher. It would be better for them to speak of the inner, the outer, and the outermost. For the master called corruption the outermost darkness, and there is nothing outside it. He said, my Father who is in secret, he said, go into your room, shut the door behind you, and pray to your Father who is in secret. That is the one who is innermost. What is innermost is the fullness, and there is nothing further within, and this is what they call uppermost. Okay, so let us unpack. For this reason, he said, I have come to make the lower like the upper, and the upper... Wait, hold on. I have come to make the lower like the upper, and the outer like the inner, and to unite them in that place. I have a notification that's really distracting me. Sorry. This is real life, people. It's just raw. Okay, so I'm prompted to explain light and vessel. So if you split, okay, so if you consider that before the all that is spoke and said, let there be light, and the formation of existence as we know it and experience it started. All that is was just contained in one, and there was nothing separate. There hadn't been any event yet. There hadn't been any sound made. So everything was just beingness. It was all one thing, but also not a thing. It was just blended. And so then after that first event, it was like the all that was one became two. So basically what happened was the light was in perpetual, eternal existence, being. It's hard to find the right word for it, but was sustained, and I don't know if suspended is the right word. But once there was consciousness began to crystallize and the letters were formed and the word was spoken, there was a vessel that was created to contain the light. So everything in existence is basically a version of the vessel, and everything in existence is a container for the light. So the living force that animates me and all my cells, that is the light. It's the light of the Creator. It's all that is. It's the source of everything. It's the presence of all color at once, right? It is pure love. It is pure consciousness. It is the eternal tendency to be and create in love, right? And so that is the light. The light is in the couch that I'm sitting on. The light is in this book. The light is in a thought or an idea. The light is in the trees. It's in the sky. It's everywhere. It's animating everything. So basically, everything that we yearn for in this life, everything that we want, everything that we think will satisfy us, whether it be food or a car or an outfit or a hot shower or the perfect lover or husband or wife or just wanting your kids to like get their shit together. Everything that we want, we really want the fulfillment of the light. But we, in this physical realm, in the outermost realm, are kind of caught up in the physical flesh suit avatar that the light is contained in. We get distracted and we think that we want the steak, but we want the light that is revealed through the stake, right? So everything in existence boils down to being light and vessel, which kind of is this, it's similar to masculine and feminine energy, right? So let's refer to the chart really quick. Oh, and one more thing. In order to receive the light, we have to be in affinity with the light. It's like the law of attraction. Like attracts like, resonance, all of that. Like you have to be in resonance with something to be able to harmonize with it. So we have to be in affinity with the light in order to be able to receive the light, embody it, hold it, and be able to transmute and like ground it and use it without it like causing chaos. If we take light that didn't earn, we will have chaos. And it goes back to that idea of pulling energy from somewhere that you didn't earn. So it's like building up a credit card debt with interest. Okay, so the light comes from these unmanifest realms, and it pushes up against this veil, I guess. But all of this light condenses right into this primordial point until it bursts through and spills over into the beginning of the realm that in the realm that we exist in, into this first governing force called Keter. And that light is pure, unadulterated, like God energy. It's not filtered at all yet. It's far too strong. It's also the least physical, even in the realm of idea. Like this isn't even a fathomable idea. It's completely abstract beyond our conception. In fact, the only once you get up to this level of consciousness, you are absorbed and you are never to be heard from again. It's like you go into non-existence because you are completely reabsorbed and there's nothing left of you, like not even your spirit or soul are individual anymore. But don't worry, we're not even in danger of getting this conscious. So the light comes in first, and then it shoots over to the second governing force of reality, which is so this is the feminine receiving the light, but then it becomes masculine again because it wants to send the light over to the next governing force, which becomes a vessel, and it becomes a feminine. By nature, this is the masculine column. It's the right column energy of justice and mercy, and the left column energy is the feminine negative energy, like in electricity, positive, negative, masculine, feminine. This is the column of judgment and restriction. Okay, so the light comes into this realm of being, like the thing that holds the multiverse, right? We're not even in like the physical realm of existence yet. And this is the vessel that contains the light. And each of these things are the vessels that contain the light. And so it's like this mirrored, like layering effect, this domino effect that just keeps happening. Like, have you ever been in a dressing room and you're standing in a mirror and there's a mirror behind you and it's just like these layers and layers of reflections and reflections and reflections? That's kind of what it's like. Okay, so we're the vessel. We want to receive the light. Okay, he has come here to make the lower like the upper and the outer like the inner, and to unite them. So we're talking about light and vessel, and we want to connect these things, and we need to have affinity with the light. So when they're talking about the upper and the lower, they're referring to this chart. And so the lowest one down here, so the energy goes from here and it goes like this, in this sort of like path, like a lightning bolt, the path of the lightning bolt. So these upper realms are the most abstract. This is the supernal triad. Then as you come lower, the pureness and the pureness of the light is filtered down so we can handle it. Otherwise, it would be too much. It would be like running too much energy through like a circuit, and it would blow the circuit. So as you come down and the energy is getting filtered and filtered, it's also becoming more condensed and crystallized and becoming more physical until you get down into like this middle realm here. This would be the heart center or the heart chakra. This is the Christ center. That's why Jesus comes and lives in your heart. Like, people don't know all this, it's all Kabbalah. So the heart center is here. And then we go down into this realm here is more in the like the womb and the sexual organs of the man and the woman. So, and it also is ruled by the moon. So we're getting into the astral realm and the dream world here. This is like where we have like dreams. I guess maybe that's where like ghosts and things are. But this is where we connect to like that when people say like the veil is thin, like this is what they're talking about. This is like the spirit world as we relate to it on earth. And then when you come down even further, this Malchut, this is the physical realm. This is where the universe is. This is where the multiverse is. This is all the physical things, the material things in material existence. This is where all of this consciousness, all of the creative life force of the creator, all the intention, the beautiful machinery of creation comes down, and it finally is brought into formation and into perfection, into completion in the material world, in the lower world. So he came here, meaning Christ came here to make the lower world like the upper world. As we evolve as a soul, all of these governing forces, we learn to balance these within ourselves so that we can be self-mastered and live in harmony. So when Christ came down, basically, when Christ was crucified, he opened up a portal here that connected the human realm with all of these upper worlds. And you see how these like paths of energy, they're all crisscrossing going through here. This is where they're all integrated. This is the Messiah energy here. It corrects everything. And so another thing that we need to say and talk about is called, okay, so when the soul comes here, it's given all of the weaknesses that it has on purpose, and the soul chooses like the parents and the place that it grows up and all the difficulties and all the ways that it needs to be challenged to grow in this life and to correct, to become a more perfected, higher ascended version of the self, right? So that is called tikkun. It's sort of like karma, but it's more like, instead of being like kind of what goes around comes around, it's more like assignments, and you get like like if you were like a total shit in like the last life, like you may still be working off some of that negativity in this life. But so we create angels, positive angels and negative angels, through our words and actions and our energy and the energy we put out in the world. And basically it's like saying the energy that you put out will be radiating around you, and you will manifest more of the same, right? So if you're putting out negativity, we don't know when that negativity is going to come back, but we're creating like a negative angel that's going to come back that we have to either purify through self-sacrifice and transformation, a proactive transformation, or we experience difficulty and chaos and that corrects it, or we experience pain and sadness and suffering and that corrects it. And if there's, and the ultimate cleanser is death. It's like the character dies and starts over. It's just like a video game, really. It's kind of the same idea. Think about the most simple video game like Mario. It's a great metaphor to use. Okay, so The upper like the lower. So these are the highest realms that are the most abstract and the most elevated levels of consciousness. And as they become more crystallized and dense, they become a little less elevated, because when we're up here, this is pure potential. This is unmanifest. This is infinite possibility. This is eternal, and it's perpetual, and it doesn't have a shelf life. The more physical something gets, it begins to decay. It becomes subject to death, right? And that's corruption. It's not as elevated as up here. Not to mention that once something is formed, even in just the idea world, it then becomes limited. So it's not that that's bad. It's just that we are taking these eternal energies and making them finite, and we're taking them and we're giving them boundary and borders and shape, right? So they can be shaped. That's what's happening up here at the purest level, is that pure energy is shot out into pure, unadulterated, masculine, active force that's like, "Mah!" And it shoots off with nowhere to go until the feminine catches it, restricts it, contains it, and gives it shape and form, right? And structure. So the idea as we evolve like souls, is that we're becoming more elevated, meaning we are raising our consciousness levels. And I know this is very abstract and it doesn't seem to make any sense, but when you learn about Kabbalah, it's kind of like that. And then you learn it in layers and layers and layers, and all of a sudden something starts to click and it makes sense. So just trust me. And then the information is seeping into your soul, and your soul gets it either way. So maybe you'll wake up tomorrow and be like, I think I'm starting to understand what she's talking about. Okay. So, and then when it goes on to say, and then he is making, the outer like the inner to unite them. Again, we're talking about attaining affinity of form. And so these upper realms, this is like the inner, this is like the interior, non-physical, non-material realm. This is where you're going deeper and deeper into the consciousness, into the soul, into the spirit. As you come out, or as you come down, you're coming into the outer expression, into the material world, into a kind of a lower state of consciousness. It's denser here. We're slower. We're slowed down. And we're limited to the states that we're awakened at thus far. So making the outer like the inner is trying to take these outer material realms and perfect them so that they are more attuned to the upper or the inner, the deepest parts, right? So I hope it's starting to make some sense about the affinity of the upper and the lower and the outer and the inner. It's like the upper is the inner, like the deeper we go. Like I'm moving on to another layer of a point right now, but it's on my mind, so I don't want to lose it. So it's interesting because the deeper we go inward, it's like we go in and in and in so far, layer and layer and layer and layer and layer into our soul, into our heart, into our spirit, into our deep unconscious. And it's like the deeper we go, the further out we get. It's like we find this bridge, this portal through our heart. And we can almost travel in so deep within ourselves that we're at the furthest reaches of the outer realms of the edge of reality, of physical existence again. It's like we go so far in and then we turn around and we're so far out. But the further out we get to the surface, it's like the more limited we become, because the whole potential of the universe isn't there anymore. You know, even when we create something in our imagination, that has so much potential. And so sometimes we delay bringing it into the material because we don't want to lose the fantasy of the potential of what it could be, right? Because there's something about that that's so limitless. So I think we touch on that in the next couple of sentences, the point that I'm getting at. Those who say there is a heavenly person and one that is higher are wrong, for they call the visible heavenly person lower, and the one to whom the hidden realms belongs the higher. So right now, I feel like they're talking about the person that is like a nice person and a good person visibly and on the outside is great, but it's not as elevated as someone who is going into a deeply intrinsic place to transform from the inside out. Which brings up another point that everything starts on the inside first. It's all about the energy and the intention. That's the root of everything. It informs everything that we express, like our motives, our energy, and our intentions flavor all that we put out, right? So if you do something nice just for the sake of it, just because you're like, oh, I want to do good works or whatever, it's good. It still helps and it still makes a positive difference. But it's even more powerful when there's like a deep internal like connection with the purpose behind the action that you're doing. Does that make sense? Like there's some kind of miraculous energy that gets activated when that connection is there. This is just what I'm getting right now. It would be better for them to speak of the inner, the outer, and the outermost. For the master called corruption the outermost darkness, and there is nothing outside it. He said, my Father who is in secret, he said, go into your room. Okay, before I go that far. So it would be better for them to speak of the inner, the outer, and the outermost, for the master called corruption the outermost darkness. Okay, so back to the point of when you are innermost, it's like in the innermost realms, it's not physically manifested yet. So it's still got all the potential, right? And it still has eternal life. There's no expiration date on it yet. But the moment something becomes outer or materialized, it is corrupted by the expiration date. Also by the limitation you have now set on it. It is now not in affinity with the light because the light of the Creator is eternal, right? The light of the Creator is the innermost. It's not, I won't say it's not materialized because in Him we live and move and have our being. So it is the materialization of the light, but it is a finite version, right? So it is not as pure as if it were completely non-material and abstract. Also, in the non-material world, there is no death. And in the material world, there is death. And so the ultimate corruption, the ultimate expression of God is love emanating in perpetual beingness, right? It's existence, it's creation, right? The opposite of that is death, darkness, and non-beingness. And so when it talks about the outermost darkness and the corruption of the outermost darkness, it's not just talking about the material the materialized potential being corrupted, but also we're talking about outside of reality. Remember, we talked about this realm here where all the light of the creator condenses into the primordial point and then comes into this process that then is birthed after all 10 of these stages is finally birthed here where we have the Big Bang, right? So all this is Big Bang territory. This is where the universe happens. All of these 10 stops are actually 11 or 10, and then this one's the 11th. All of this is still non-physical, but it's still the process that is giving birth to this realm. Beyond this non-physical energetic world, there's 3 veils of non-existence. There is the endless light, which is like all this chaos and pure, unadulterated potential that is without form or structure. Like not even in a cellular form, not even an atomic form, right? It's just like, rah! I mean, think about when you open up an atom and the atom bomb happens. Like, now imagine that times like, I don't know, infinity. So that is that realm. And then beyond that is the sea of endless darkness. It is perpetual, like dark matter, like dark void, right? It's the void. And then beyond that, beyond the void, or I don't know if the absolute is the void, or the void is here and the absolute is the absolute unbeingness. But there's like a sea of eternal darkness, which is, there's a void in here somewhere, and then there's like absolute notness, right? This is the outermost corruption because there's no existence, there's no being there, right? It's the destruction of all that is. It's the extinguishing of all of life, of all of the light. So that is the greatest outermost darkness, and there is nothing outside of it, and there's literally nothing outside of it. Like it is the nothingness. It's more nothing than nothingness. It was never nothingness because it wasn't. Let's see. And there's nothing outside of it. He said, "My Father who is in secret, go into your room, shut the door behind you, and pray to your Father who's in secret." Now, I think that this is talking about going in, like going in and shutting your room. It's like turning into the heart where you connect to that Christ center, that Christ consciousness, where all of these governing forces are integrated within us, right? And they sacrifice and they cross and they break apart, and all of that energy is torn open and put together and healed and made whole and perfect there. And so when we can turn inward and connect to that energy, then we connect to the light of the Creator as the vessel. That's where we channel it through and fill all that fulfillment. And it's like it's a lasting kind of fulfillment that gives you peace and certainty and contentment. What is innermost is the fullness, and there is nothing further within. It's like you can go a million layers and keep going a million layers in, but it's just more of like the pureness of the light, and it gets more and more pure and more full. Whereas when you go to the outermost, it gets more and more limited and less, and there's nothing and nothing. This is so fascinating to think about, that it's tiring to the mind to just try to contemplate it. And this is what they call uppermost. So the uppermost is the fullness of the light. And so basically, in human terms, we're basically trying to find fulfillment and happiness and purpose in this world We want to evolve and master ourselves and govern the forces within us. But as we do that, we really do start mastering ourselves, and we start governing the forces within us, and then we become the creator of our own experience, or the co-creator, with divine. And we start transcending our ego, hopefully, and restricting our desire to receive for ourselves alone. And, we start wanting to contribute to the light of the world, to the goodness of the world. And so that's what's super fulfilling. And so basically the inner and the outer journey, the point of it is to transform ourselves on the inside, through the soul work of that deep exploration of finding out, like, okay, where are my weaknesses? Where do I need to transcend myself? Where is my ego keeping me small, keeping others small around me, keeping me in darkness, keeping me from feeling fulfilled and experiencing the light of miracles, and harmony and ease and goodness and peace. The kingdom is within, and that's the whole thing that we're trying to do. We're trying to unlock all of these mansions within the kingdom so we can live in the state of bliss. But it is a discipline of, and a spiritual practice of a pilgrimage through the soul. So we're going through a process within this, and the process is ongoing, but it's very satisfying. And it's not that it's not challenging, it is. But there's something to it that gives you this deep sense of peace and contentment and satisfaction, but also ambition and hope and certainty and vigor. And when we surrender to the process, it's like we begin to feel like we're on a path. And there's something that feels very, you feel very held, very guided. And it's not to say you never feel alone. But what we want to do is we want to really transform ourselves so that we can start changing our lives on the outside, but changing how we show up as a person in this material world. Because this material world is the only chance that God gets to express the divine self through us, through the beauty of nature, through our experience of it. So we want to make the most of it. And I don't know, I've never felt better than when I realized, or when I started to learn, that I had some control over what was going on in this internal world of mine. I didn't know that I had any control over my thoughts. I thought I was at the mercy of my thoughts, my moods, my feelings. I didn't know that I could have sovereignty over those, that I could choose them, that I could say, no, I'm not going to think about that. Oh, this tape that's playing is very unhealthy. I need to turn it off. In fact, it's the voice of an opposing force that is constantly here in my video game as my opponent, trying to push me to the next level. So it's all about inner transformation. And as we change on the inside, our outside starts to change. If we try to change the outside first, we might be able to white knuckle it in place for a while, but there's always going to be chaos fused, geysers, erupting everywhere. Because what we need is affinity with the light, and we need to be in vibration with that we're calling in. And it has to start from the inside out, or else even if we get what we want, if we're not in vibrational resonance with it, we'll lose it, It'll leave us, or we'll self-sabotage, or we'll blow a fuse. I'm blowing a fuse right now. And even though I thought this episode was going to be shorter, it's still like 45 minutes long. But we got our chart and we did some of the, we put some visuals to the abstract concepts. All right, y'all. Inner and outer, we want affinity with the light so that we can be in resonance and find harmony and flow with the universe and open ourselves to miracles and open ourselves to changing for the better and expanding the light within us so that it has a brighter and positive effect on the world at large. We can make a difference in the world, but it starts with this work within ourselves. Because when we try to do things in broad strokes, like we realize that it's like that only goes so far. It's really the cumulative effort of a billion people on this planet making small changes and choices every day because they care, because they feel like they want to share, right? Because they're putting themselves in the consciousness of love, and love thinks about the big picture and others and how it's going to affect the whole and the greater good, and if their actions are going to add to the greater harm. All right, y'all, I am going to eat dinner and water my garden and still take a shower and edit this video and maybe go to sleep before tomorrow. All right, love y'all. Ciao.